Hi everyone, DLRR here with yet another build. This time I'm calling this build a double dipping build. Yes, it sounds like a poor attempt at attention grabbing by being disgusting. Whatever. There is a reason to calling it a double dipping build. That's because I'm using the Avatar of Fire node. I'm sure pretty much all of you know about it, but for those who don't, it converts 50% of physical damage to fire. Pairing that with either a Molten Strike or an Infernal Blow that ensures that I have 100% of conversion from physical damage to fire damage. This then allows me to double dip in the sense that I can use both physical as well as elemental affixes. One of my favorites is melee physical damage versus plus weapon elemental damage. Alternatively, if you don't do melee physical, you can put added fire as well. That would stack together with weapon elemental damage fully. Now this Avatar of Fire, given there's a double dip, that's only part one of it. My second double dip is on using a pair of Doriani's Catalysts. Doriani's is very nice, unique in general. I like it very much. First, it gives you a significant amount of added physical damage, in this case 81 to 124 physical damage. That's much more than you can get from any normal affix for a rare, so it's really fantastic in that sense. In addition, you do get 93% of increased elemental damage here, plus 10% of implicit elemental damage. This goes up to 100 on explicit and 10% on implicit, so 110% increase elemental damage. Now again, because of Avatar of Fire, where my physical is converted entirely to fire damage, this 110%, up to 110% of increased elemental damage applies. The wonderful thing about Doriani's Catalysts is that this elemental damage affix is a global one. So this 93% applies to both my offhand and my main hand. Likewise, whatever is on my main hand applies to both hands as well. This gives me a total of up to 210% increased elemental damage per weapon on my offhand and on my main hand. So you have, in this case, 69 to 104 physical damage, and you have increased elemental damage of 85 plus 94, that's 177% increased elemental damage, plus the 10% implicit, so that's 187% increased elemental damage. That is phenomenal. That's higher than pretty much any affix out there. One thing to note, however, as fantastic as this sounds, because it's global, it adds on, it's additive with your other affix, with your passives, and it's not multiplicative that you would find in a local sort of affix. So yes, it's great, but not that great. But if you think 210%, up to 210%, sorry, give me a second, chroming shit is so bloody expensive. Yes, that's accurate. Who was that? Aureliano Segundo. What a shitty name you've got there. But anyway, back to the elemental damage. Up to 210% increased elemental damage. Comparing that against what you have in the tree, if I look at the Ash, Frost and Storm cluster, I have 4 affixes here, 8, 8, 8 and 16, giving me a total of 40% increased elemental damage. 210% that I get from the Doriani's is more than 5 times of this Ash, Frost and Storm cluster. That means by dual wielding a pair of these with Avatar of Fire, I gain effectively more than 20 passive nodes worth of increased elemental damage, right? Because if it's 40 for 4 nodes, I have 210, that's effectively 21 passive nodes worth of increased elemental damage. That's how fantastic dual wielding these are, and that's how great I think double dipping is. Now, as an example, before I go to my main build proper, I've set this character up as a pure Avatar of Fire character, so there are no increased damage nodes anywhere, no increased attack speed nodes anywhere, just to show the plain simple effect of Avatar of the double dipping Avatar of Fire dual wielding. So with single wield Doriani's catalysts, right, with full Avatar of Fire, I've got about 450, 460 worth of DPS on Molten Strike and Infernal Blow. When I dual wield it, by the mere impact of dual wielding these, and of course dual wielding, you've got stuff like increased attack speed, more physical damage, I think 15-20% each. Nice, but not that great. But because I'm double dipping, and I'm getting 187% increased elemental damage, I've just doubled my DPS, right? From 450, 460 to 950 and 910 worth of DPS. I've doubled my DPS based on that. Okay, let me just reply to Aureliano Gundu. Okay, so I've given you an example of how great double dipping is. Let me just go to my build proper. Before I go into the specific passives, I would like to, before I go into the specific items as well as the linkages, I'd like to go through the passives. Let me just equip these. Okay, the passives for double dipping. You've seen that I've gotten Avatar of Fire originally, so this is key. In addition to that, because I'm using Maces on the Doriani's Baptism of Light, is a pretty decent node. I wouldn't say it's that great because I've taken Resolute Technique. The Dorianis do come with a decent crit chance of about 6.7%. There's also a global crit chance of 38-39%, so you can double dip on these if you wanted to, since you're dual wielding, and that gives you about up to 80% worth of crit chance. However, because these are global, it isn't as great as local crit chance, and I still prefer keeping it simple, doing Resolute Technique. Don't bother with accuracy and crit chance, stuff like that. Other great notes I've taken, Lava Lash, of course. Now, Blunt Instrument is my favorite note of the entire tree. Oh, okay, not favorite. I've got one saved for later that I will talk about. But Blunt Instrument is great, 28% damage, armor, and life. No reason not to take that. I've got a couple of life notes here. I've avoided Arsonist, I think, based on the damage that you have here versus your the number of nodes that you need to invest is just not worth it. Unwavering Stance is up to you. If you are taking, say, Bringer of Rain with Blind Chance on others, probably you shouldn't bother taking Unwavering Stance, but I like it, I've taken it. There are a couple of nodes that I've taken in the tree that support Molten Strike. If you like Molten Strike, those are Iron Grip and Point Blank. I'm only spending a total of 3 nodes, 3 passives just to spec for Molten Strike. So if you do decide to go for Infernal Blow, you can avoid these 3 and spec into melee physical damage, which apply only to your main hit, so it works well for Infernal Blow and not necessarily for Molten Strike's projectiles. I also very much like the combination of Dervish and Blade Barrier. The combination of these two clusters give me a total of 21% block chance. Add that to the 15% block chance from dual wielding, that is 36%, which is pretty decent for block chances, like having a shield effectively. And in addition to that, you do get quite a lot of damage as well, so no complaints there. I've taken Iron Reflexes. Again, no reason not to take this. Even if you don't take Unwavering Stance, it still is very strong. And lastly, the one note I wanted to highlight here is Revelry. Now, you'll notice that the rest of my tree has no mana. Revelry is pretty much my only source of mana when I'm attacking. That and Warlord's Mark. +2 per hit. If there are 5 creeps, Using Infernal Blow, that's plus 10. Right? Using Molten Strike, Revelry really shines because of the sheer number of hits from Molten Strike. My next few levels, I'll probably take Endurance Charges here, as well as here, just because I'm using an Immortal Call. And if I have additional passives post that, I'll take additional life off the top, and maybe armor, steel skin, that's pretty good. I may also take aura nodes because I do have some auras, but that's for later. So now that we've gone through the passives, let's go into the items and the linkages. Now the items, obviously we've got a pair of Dorianis which give me 2% total of Elemental Leech. In addition, I've taken Doriani's Invitation, which gives me yet another 1% more of Fire Leech. 3% Leech means that I don't need to have a passive, don't need to have a socket for Life Leech, so that's fantastic, more DPS. If you're feeling gutsy, if you want further DPS, you can replace Doriani's Invitation with a Meganaut's Girdle. Because of the 200% of increased elemental damage per item, any flat physical damage is really much further increased. Not forgetting the double dip on your melee physical and weapon elemental damage. I have started using Abysses. With the flat physical damage, again, as I mentioned earlier, it really is very much more increased because of the plus 200% elemental damage. If you have a Bringer of Rain, that probably is a bit better. It makes you tankier with more life and more block chance, but you get less DPS due to level 12 melee physical damage and faster attacks, as well as less flat fizz. For my other items, they are pretty straightforward. I wish I had more jewelry which had more physical damage. I've only got 3 to 7 here, and I've got none here. The rest are life and resistances. Now on to the gems. There are two variants to this double dipping, two sources if you will. First one is Infernal Blow. With Infernal Blow, I pair it with melee physical damage, melee splash, multi-strike, and weapon elemental damage. This gives me a DPS of 21,000 without auras. Adding on auras of Grace as well as Herald of Ash, I get DPS of 24,000, and that's pretty decent. The other variant that I have is Molten Strike. Now the difference between Molten Strike and Infernal Blow, I can't use melee physical damage because that only applies to the main hit. Added fire damage applies to both the main hit as well as projectiles, which is nice. And because I don't need melee splash, I can put fire penetration. That gives me a DPS of 24,000 as well. Alternatively, if you think you're going to be fighting solo bosses quite a bit, guys with a lot of DPS, and you only need to focus down one guy, you can remove fire penetration for melee physical damage for yet another multiplier, and that gives you a whopping 35,000 DPS. And mind you, that's only for the main hit. I still have a lot of projectiles that is doing a significant amount of damage as well. Other nodes that I've taken, other passives that I've taken, what am I saying? Other skills that I'm using. You've seen my auras. I've taken Herald of Ash. This is useful especially for Molten Strike because sometimes the projectiles don't kill the guy outright, so your main hit ignites them and they melt thereafter. Grace is very nice for defense. I've put in Purity of Fire as well in cases where I may face double reflect mobs. Purity of Fire helps. I can remove Herald of Ash to put that in. On single reflect mobs, I don't really need it. I've also taken two separate cast when damage taken setups. First one is your low level Enduring Cry and Warlord's Mark. The curse is entirely up to you. Warlord's Mark helps me with Life Leech and Mana Leech. It's just a personal preference. You can go for Elemental Weakness or Flammability for more DPS, or Enfeeble for additional defensiveness. My other setup is your usual Molten Shell and Immortal Call. One thing to note about Molten Shell, because you've got these three uniques, Molten Shell actually heals you whenever it blows, so that's pretty good. You don't get as much damage from Molten Shell though, because you've taken mainly melee physical damage from your tree, and even the only fire damage nodes I've taken are with weapons, so those do not apply to Molten Shell. Lastly, Leap Slam for movement. Straightforward enough. You could put in some Val gems if you wanted here. For example, I used to put in Val Clarity and Val Haste, store them up for a boss and gun them down when I'm up front, but right now I'm just leveling certain gems in it. Okay, now that I've gone through the two separate variants, let's just see the build in action. There's nothing much to talk about with this build in terms of playability or playstyle. It's your typical melee build, so I won't spend too much time showing the intricacies of combat. You'll see this in any other Molten Strike or Infernal Blow build. So let's just find somebody to blow up. You notice that my mana is pretty consistent. Again, it's entirely because of Revelry slash Warlord's Mark. You'll also notice that Herald of Ash is really helping me with evening out my DPS, because Molten Strike DPS can be very lumpy. I'll just change out Molten Strike soon for Infernal Blow so you can see this. I'm just looking for a rare mob, because right now there's nothing, pretty much nothing for you to look at. You'll notice that till now I've not used a flask a single time, because my 3% Ellie Leech is more than sufficient. Where the hell are the rare mobs here? Come on, stop hiding! Oh, come on. See, I'm running out of things to say with stupid normal mobs, right? There we go, rare mob. And of course he needs to run away, asshole. Okay, see? Went down, just like butter. I know, he's not the guy with the highest life around, but it's taking me some time to find somebody worth killing. Now let's go on to the next variant, Infernal Blow. Sorry, I forgot that I already had melee physical damage there. So melee splash, melee physical damage. Let's go find something else to kill. Note that with Infernal Blow, I have less DPS, less mana regeneration, because there are fewer hits. So I need to wait for Warlord's Mark to cast first before I kill people. But the great thing about Infernal Blow is when the big blast comes, oh wow, what a great feeling. Kills everybody quickly. I have no preference between the two. I think they have their pros and cons between Infernal Blow as well as Molten Strike. I think Infernal Blow helps with big packs and Molten Strike helps with bosses. But really, it's entirely up to you. I've spec'd it such that you can do both ways. And I think that's pretty much it. I've covered my passives, I've covered the items, I've covered the skills. See what I mean about running out of mana with Infernal Blow? Because of the few amount of hits compared to Molten Strike, I need to wait for the Warlord's Mark to cast, which doesn't take long anyway. So I think that's pretty much end of the build. I hope you guys have enjoyed this build video. I think It's not too expensive. Yes, it utilizes Edziri Uniques, but my 2 Doriani Catalysts, I bought one for 2 Exalts, and the second one I bought for 6 Exalts. So it's only 8 Exalts. So for a weapon with 8 Exalts, you can get up to 35,000 tooltip DPS on your Molten Strike. Not to forget, Molten Strike also has other projectiles that hit as well, so it's 50,000 DPS, assuming only one of the other projectiles hit, for only less than 10 Exalts on your weapon. My belt, I think I bought for 10 Chaos for the Durrani's Invitation belt, maybe even lesser than that. And my Abyssus I bought for 10 Chaos as well. So while it is expensive, it's not the worst, it's not the most expensive build out there, it's not mirror worthy, but it gives you superb DPS. I hope you enjoyed this double dipping build. I've left the official build guide in the link below. Feel free to comment either on YouTube or on the official forums. Thank you for listening.